This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Mac and Jack Saturday Debate Show.
Yes.
I am Jamie Paggs, and I'm not filling for Mac because he is on the show today. Of course, we also have Jack, Hall of Fame boxing writer and best-selling author, Dr. Paul Seminger. Good morning, guys. How are you?
It's great to have Mac back. This is super.
Well, thank
Well,
you.
I saw Mac yesterday, so he was giving me a little bit of a hard time. It was great to have him back yesterday. Now it's very good to have him back.
Yeah.
He gave me a difficult time.
Well, Jack, I have to keep you in line. Are you kidding me? Yeah. So.
Well, you see, Jack has been running amok lately while Mac has been gone. You see, when the cat's away, the mice will play, and Jack is really taking full advantage. So it's good to have you back. Somebody's got to be able to keep him in check. I've tried my best, but I can't hold a candle. You have some big shoes to fill there, Mac. So it's hard to do that on my side.
Yeah, I hear you. You know, Jack is. I said, I'm the rooster. He's the hen. I'm always chasing him around, trying to get him.
I got my Yankee card was taken away for 2 years by Mac. He made a commissioner's decision. I appealed it. I'm appealing it. And the way they're going, I want that Yankee card back or that suspension lesson. But we'll talk about it maybe later.
Actually, Jack, the way they're going right now, you want that card held up, and you don't want to be back in the Yankees. I mean, he gave you a gift. He took your Yankee card away. He gave you a gift. The rest of us are suffering with this team.
Hey, and I'm still trying to find out. And I'm still trying to figure out how a guy who's a Mets fan gets to take away anybody's Yankees card. But that's really the debate question of the day. You know, how is it somebody who is a Giants fan and a Mets fan gets to take away a Yankee card from anybody? But
yeah,
I digress.
See, folks.
Speaking of the Yankees,
go ahead.
Sorry. Speaking of the Yankees, we might as well start right there as our first debate question. Yeah.
Okay.
And this was given to us by Jack, so I'm going to go ahead and read it verbatim. If the Yankees don't make the playoffs this season, would it be the biggest collapse in baseball history? Let's start with you know, the guy who talks about the Yankees more than everybody else that I know, and I am more knowledgeable about the Yankees than I ever wanted to be right now because I really don't care about the Yankees very much. But, Doc, why don't you start this one off?
All right. So, yes, absolutely, positively, it would be the biggest collapse of all time, hands down, no matter what. And I'll tell you why. Other teams have blown big leads. Like the 1951 Los Angeles Dodgers blew the big lead to the Giants, right? And then Bobby Thompson hits the big home run, and it changed all of that. And the Giants go to the World Series. That was a huge collapse. There have been other big collapses. In 1969, the Chicago Cubs collapsed, and the Mets were able to capture the NL East crown. There have been other collapses. In 1978, the Red Sox had a big lead, and they collapsed. And a couple times in recent years, the Mets have had some big leads in September, and they've fallen apart. But this is the thing. This is why it would be the biggest collapse ever. The Yankees were playing this year at an historic rate. They were playing at such a level that people started saying this could be the greatest team of all time. They're on pace for 120 wins. And they went from being a team that found unique and wonderful ways to win day after day to a team that can't even score a run. They have 4 wins in the entire month of August. And you'd say, yeah, but other teams have had bigger collapses. That's true. Interesting statistic I came up with earlier today. On August 20th, 1978, that Red Sox team that collapsed actually had an 8.5 game lead in the American League East. The Yankees lead right now is 8 games. The Yankees are in a worse spot than the 78 Red Sox were by half a game on this date. But this is why it would be the biggest collapse. Back then, even 1978, they didn't have all these extra rounds of playoffs. So for the Yankees to not make the playoffs, they would have to lose the American League East and lose all those wild card bids. It would be the biggest collapse in the history because they expanded the playoffs. To go from the best team of all time, what they were saying, to a team that can't even qualify for the playoffs would be absolutely, without a doubt, the worst collapse in the history of baseball. That's my point.
No. Listen, I agree to what you're saying in part, but I mean, if you look at the teams, the Boston Red Sox and the Yankee team, Boston had more talent than the Yankees. There's no doubt about it. Player by player, they had the best outfield, infield, pitching staff, and the Yankees were, I mean, not even close in some certain instances. So when you look at how the Red Sox played down the line and how the Yankees played down the line, there's no doubt that the Red Sox collapse is bigger than the Yankees. I mean, if you sit back and you really look at it, I think their bench was even better than the Yankees. So if you're really going to look at it, there's no doubt that Boston collapse was more significant than the Yankees.
I'm going to jump in here before you get in here, Jack, just because you probably know a lot more about the Yankees than I do. I don't think it matters on the talent level on the team. I think it does matter where. So even if you're saying in the grand scope of things that the Yankees overachieved before the All-Star break and now are underachieving after the All-Star break, and all the trades that they made and all the different things that they did, I was watching the show a little earlier this morning and just how that how they were talking about how poor decisions being made by everybody, like from the manager on up. Is leading to the demise of the Yankees. They were the best team in baseball for the first 3 months of the year, and now they have fallen from grace, and they continue to fall, almost like they're falling to earth. There's a fire, there's flame going behind them, like they're a meteor about to hit the ground. So I agree. I think that it would be one of the biggest collapses. And listen, I'm part of the Phillies, where we have both helped in big collapses from the Mets and watched big collapses. If you go back to the 1960 World Phillies, where they had they only had to they lost a 7-game lead in 10 games back then. So I mean that got to qualify somewhere in that top echelon of biggest collapses of all time. But at one point, the Yankees had a 17-game lead. At any point throughout history of baseball, I don't know if there's been ever a team that's had that large of a lead and didn't make the playoffs or win the pennant. And I think that's why it would be the largest collapse in Major League.
I don't think you guys are defining a collapse correctly. First of all, in 1951, the Dodgers didn't suffer collapse when they were caught by the Giants. The Giants went 37-7 over the last 44 games. So they caught the Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers could have nailed it down. If you're playing around 500 ball the last month of the season and you have a big lead and someone catches you, that's not a collapse. A collapse is when you fall apart. In 1978, the Red Sox didn't collapse against the New York Yankees. They were down. They won their last 8 games of the season. They won their last 8 games. Okay, is that a collapse? And when they had the 1-game playoff, the Red Sox, when they were down 5-2, battled valiantly back and came very close to winning the game. That wasn't exactly a collapse. The Yankees won that as much as the Red Sox lost it, just like the Giants won it just as much as the Dodgers lost it in 1951. I mean, if you want to talk about a collapse, think of the Met team. Was it 205, 206? I forgot the year, guys.
2006.
Right, they had a 7-game.
Actually, I'm sorry, 2007. 2007.
Thank you, Pax. A 7-game lead with 17 games to play, and they couldn't close it out. That's a collapse, okay? Biggest collapse in baseball history. Congratulations, Pags, was the Philadelphia Phillies, who you just mentioned, in 1964. The 6-game lead with 10 games to play. and they outright lost the pennant. It wasn't even a one-game playoff. And the reason it was a collapse is the way things were handled by their then manager, Gene Mock, a jinxed manager who later would come one strike away from going to a World Series. He never went to with the Angels. But he was pitching his two aces, Jim Bunning and Chris Short, on 2 days rest. Both of them. He was panicking. The whole team panicked. When you're bringing in your aces on short rest, when you have the lead, that's pure panic. That's a collapse. That was the biggest collapse in baseball history. Now, if the Yankees truly had an elite team this year, I'd say, yeah, it would be a collapse, but they don't. You know what the Yankees remind? This is a marathon. The baseball season's a marathon. I'm a former marathon runner. Doc is a current one. And Pax, you and Mac like to cheer from the sidelines. So all involved.
What are you talking about? I've run some 5Ks.
You run some? Yeah. Oh, thank you, Pax, for backing up my point. That's the big difference. We've seen lots of races, and I can even tell you historically, 1979 New York City Marathon is this runner, Kirk Pfeffer. He tears out. He has about a 600-yard lead on the second runner, Bill Rodgers. And I no kidding, I had like over 2-minute lead or whatever. And he gets caught at around 22 miles. Finally, after leading the whole race, that's what the Yankees are. But you know, all these hotshot marathon runners, when they tear out and get the big lead, you know they're not going to sustain it for the whole marathon. I mean, it's rare. It's rare. Joan Benoit did in the first Olympic marathon, but she was quality. This Yankee team isn't that good. I said they go 80 and 82 on the season. They're going to be better than that, obviously, at this point. You know, they're not going to lose virtually every game, but they're more like the team that I thought they were going to be. They're just not that good. How they racked up their record they did is beyond me. That, to me, is one of the greatest achievements a team ever did in baseball.
Well, Jack, that's because they got one of the best. They got one of the best pitching staffs in the league. They got two of the best home run hitters in the league. I mean, it's not by accident. I mean, you look at the Yankees right now. They're a home run and strikeout. That's a home run and strikeout team. So you can't just say that it's luck or anything like that. Listen, this team, to me, has the best roster in the league. There's no doubt about it.
You know, I don't want to compare roster for roster in the big leagues, but there are holes there. I mean, guys overachieve. Like, take Clay Holmes early in the year. He overachieved. No one could see that coming. And we knew Chapman was hit and miss, that he could be very erratic. But now Clay Holmes completely slumped. He came down to earth. He had a couple of big months, okay? And Donaldson is a little long in the tooth there at third base. Falafa doesn't really give you any offense at all. Gleyber Torres has been disappointing. He's, leveled out. Aaron Judge is having the career year, the year of his life, which he's capable of doing again. But it's just, you look at the back end of their rotation. It's the potential is there with Severino, Nestor Cortez. We didn't think he'd be that good again. He's still being good, but there's just something missing with that team. I mean, Aaron Hicks, did we expect any much more out of him? And some of the moves they made, also it's, it'll be a collapse. I'll agree with you guys who say it'll be a collapse. Definitely.
Right. And I'm going to go back to my
historic collapse to me.
But if the Yankees, this is the first year that there's 6 teams in going into the playoffs. If you're the team that was on a path to win 120 games, and you were the best team in baseball in June, it wasn't like just in April, it was in June, and you failed to make the playoffs, allowing 6 teams to catch and surpass you. And that means it would be Minnesota or Baltimore. They'd have to be worse than Minnesota or Baltimore to not make the playoffs. That would have to be the biggest collapse. That's never happened. Any of these other teams would have still made it. The Phillies, if they had 6 rounds of playoffs, they would have been in the playoffs. The Dodgers would have been in the playoffs. The Red Sox would have been in the playoffs. Every other team would have still qualified. For the Yankees to go from the tippy top down to the 7th best team in the league, that would be the biggest collapse ever. It has to be.
Well, look at the third wild card team is about 9.5 games behind the Yankees, approximately, I would say, at this moment, right?
Right now,
Well,
the
it's
number
Tampa
is
Bay. They're 8.
10 and a
Okay.
half. 10 and a half is the number that they would have to lose, because that would create everybody moving up, and actually Baltimore
Is it
taking
that
that
much?
last wild
It's
card.
less than that. I think it's less than that. Could I tell you something? 1973, I went to a Met game. The Mets won last place in their division. Last place. And I remember they were 9.5 games behind. It was about this date in August, or close to it, maybe a few days before. And I'm telling my friend, the Mets can still win the pennant. There's a path. And I was laughed at, and they did.
And they
They
did.
did.
You got to
And
believe.
in a close, so if the Yankees go backwards the way the Mets went forward, it could happen.
Yeah, but it'd be the biggest collapse ever.
I agree. I agree. It would be the biggest, and I liken this to, on occasion, you have the anomalies that happen in sports, and and I'm not. The way to compare this is that when I think about football, on occasion, when they had 16 games, that you could possibly be 6-10 and win a division and make it in the playoffs. Do you deserve to be there? No, but literally at 6-10, you could do that. It's also possible that if you were 11-5, and again, I'm going with the 16 game schedule, not a 17 game schedule, that if you went 11-5, that it was possible you did not make the playoffs. Yep. So sometimes you have that anomaly. Obviously, it happened the other year ago where it's that it really had Washington lost that game, the Giants would have made it there with a 6-10 record. Back against Chip Kelly's second year, it's possible that the Eagles could have gone 11-5 instead of 10-6 and still not made the playoffs. Yeah. So those anomalies do absolutely happen. It's the same thing here. It's just interesting that this is occurring on the first year of the longest, with the most amount of playoff teams ever to make it, sans the bubble year where everybody made the playoffs except the Phillies, because they couldn't win one game out of the 25 that they blew saves. But let's talk about that at a different time. Those types of situations, that is why I feel, because there's 6 teams that are making the playoffs. It's the first time really Major League history that they're doing this. And the Yankees, all the way up to the All-Star game, all the way up to the All-Star break, had the best record in Major League Baseball. They were 30-plus games over 500. To not make the playoffs after being the best team in baseball as recent as July, 17th, 18th? I think that's a major collapse and would get listed as the biggest collapse of all time.
Well, let's get to question 2 about the batter bunting late innings to try to break up a perfect game. What do you think, Jack?
I think if I'm on a team and a pitcher's pitching a perfect game against my team, I don't want him to get the perfect game. Why should the opposing team be rooting for the guy? Have sympathy for him now. I know Doc's viewpoint, it's probably Pags and yours as well. If it's a 1-0 game, maybe it's okay to bunt to get a base run on, because the object is always to win the game first and foremost. But if it's a 10-0 score and you're losing and you want to bunt to get on, let me ask, is that necessarily wrong? Do you want the guy to get a perfect game against your team? Don't you want to do anything possible to break up the perfect game? Should there be this baseball custom, that you just go along? I mean, so what are you then supposed to do? Where do you draw the line, guys? If you're losing 10-0 and the batter's up and it's a full count and there's a pitch a little bit out of the strike zone, not that much, a little bit, but you feel it could be ball 4, are you supposed to swing at the pitch automatically and not draw the walk? That's a question too no one wants to ask. I mean, with that said, if I'm a batter, no, I wouldn't bunt if it's 8-0, 10-0, I'm losing, because I wouldn't have the nerve to do it, to try to break up a guy's perfect game with a bunt in that situation. But if you have a chance to get back in the game, don't you bunt. But where do you draw the line again? 1-0, you're losing, 2 outs in the last inning, the infield's playing back. Okay, we could maybe accept a bunt. Is it okay if it's 2-0 short, a tying run comes up? Let's say you're losing 3-0. Is it okay to bunt? Where do you draw the line? So my answer is, yeah, get on base any darn way you can. Let the pitcher field the bunt. Let the infielders play, for the bunt just in case. Anything goes in baseball here. You don't want the pitcher on the other team to get the perfect game against your team. That's the way I look at it.
All right, I'm going to jump in here then because I feel a little differently. I feel that first off, if we're talking about the 9th inning and it's 1-0 or what have you, what the score is. If it's the 9th inning and they've pitched a perfect game, going to what you were saying about whether that pitch is going to be very close or not, and whether they should swing at it just because or let it go. That's on the pitcher. So if they do watch it, go by them. There's a piece of me that says that the umpire also knows it's a perfect game and may call that pitch specifically to help out the pitcher. Because I think that everybody likes to be a part of history. And I feel that that's a thing, that could possibly happen. Now, it just so happened that it was a swinging bunt on Roy Halladay's perfect game. And Carlos Ruiz had to jump into action and be able to throw the guy out at first to be able to get it up there. So it was an inadvertent bunt. That was a really great bunt if it was a bunt, but like I said, it was a swinging bunt, and Carlos Ruiz had to do that. If it's in the 7th inning and you want to break up the no-hitter by doing a bunt, that is now on the defense to start to recognize those things. And you better perform, because if it's a 1-0 game and you're in the 7th inning and you want to try to break up, because ultimately it becomes a mental thing. The moment you break up that perfect game, that pitcher gets rattled a little bit. Now all of a sudden he was thinking about being perfect. Now he's giving it up. Usually the next pitch after that's a home run because he puts one out there. So I can appreciate and understand that. But once you get into the 9th inning, there's a reason why there's unwritten rules that they say very specifically. You don't steal a base when you're up by 10 runs, and you do more station to station stuff when you're just crushing the team. And now that there's some of them are upheld, some of them are not. But when it comes to a perfect game, and you get beyond a certain point, I think you have an obligation to baseball. It becomes no longer about the team or even the pitcher. This is about the game itself and the integrity of that game. And not to say that, hey, you would be wrong, because truth of the matter is that the next batter comes up after the guy who bunted to get on safely and break up the perfect game. Guy better watch his head, because I figure he's going to get thrown at. Because now you've already broken up my perfect game, so why not give some retribution because of the way you did it? And that's kind of how I feel about that.
I think you're making some great points. Rick Sherlock says, "Hey, let's see what Dr. Paul has to say in the comments." So I think I can put it up. There it is. Look, he's a baseball player, so I like that. Thank you. I think you're right, Pags. Is that we have an obligation and a historic moment to recognize the historic moment. You have an obligation to the sport. I remember a number of years ago. Now, again, I don't follow football as closely as you guys, but the Colts were on their way to possibly an undefeated season. And then a couple of years later, it was the Patriots. And the idea was, are you going to play your best players in the last game or the last couple of games because of the fact that you have a chance to be a historically great team? And then does the other team have the obligation to put their best team out there to try to beat you, to make you earn it? I think there was the question about the sack, right? Didn't Strahan set a record for sacks, but the quarterback laid down to give him the record and stuff like that? And people,
the naked bootleg heard round the world.
Right. And so then you look at that record and you say, it's really not legitimate, right? You have an obligation to the idea of what the sport is all about. And here's the ironic thing. If you're pitching a perfect game, I think if you're going to break it up, if you're a ball player, you don't want to break it up in the cheapest possible way. Oh, I'm gonna show you up and I'm gonna do a little dinky bunt just so I can get a hit and you don't get the perfect game. If you're gonna break it up, you want to break it up the right way. It's sort of like a boxer, even, Jack, right? You could talk about this, where who would you rather fight to get the belt? Would you rather fight the guy who's just a placeholder, or would you rather fight the guy who's recognized as the champion? You want to beat the true champion to be recognized as the next true champion. If you're going to break up a perfect game, you're going to want to break up the perfect game by getting a legitimate hit or by getting a walk. Like, you're under no obligation. Pags is right to swing at a pitch out of the strike zone. You know, the pitcher's job is to throw the strikes to make you swing and to make you miss or ground out or fly out. The other funny thing, though, as Rick said, like, what do I think as a pitcher? I have had games, especially when I first started pitching in both of the two leagues where I'm in, where people would try to bunt on me. Here's the ironic thing about this whole discussion is most of the time when people bunt, especially in the major leagues, but even in the levels where I play, we get the guy out. You go down off the mound, you catch the ball, your catcher catches it, and you throw the guy out. You can't get down the line quickly enough. And that should be in the major leagues too. Like, a bunt is a low percentage play for getting on base. So it's really not the best way to break up a no-hitter or a perfect game, but it just feels cheap. So I say it's the wrong thing. Again, if you're battling for a win, and it's the ninth inning, it's a one-run game, no, you do whatever you can to get on base. If you're a great bunter, sure, you bunt. And I think that's the other piece, right? So if it's a guy like Phil Rizzuto or Pete Rose or somebody that's a spray hitter, Ichiro or something, Rod Carew, and they're going to lay down a bunt because they bunt often, and that's how they create some of their value, and that's how they get on base, sure, then it's legitimate. But if it's a home run hitter, he decides he's just going to bunt or, to break up a perfect game, that just feels cheap. And I think they have an obligation to the history of the sport and the sport itself you put your best foot forward and you try to win the best way you can. If it's 10-0 and you're bunting just to break up a perfect game, it feels wrong.
And just as a little bit more caveat to that.
What's that?
Did you comment on this, Mac? What do you stand?
Again, I don't care what the score is. You're there to play the best game that you can play. I mean, I don't care what you are on the bench, with how much talent you have. I don't care if you're a legend or not. You play the game the best way to try to win. That's what you get paid for. You don't get paid to not try or not to do something to have your team possibly come back and win. So I don't know what you guys are talking about. You're a professional player. You're getting paid to play the game. You're not getting paid to go out there and sit on the bench and act like a fool. So again, I don't know what you guys are saying. There's one way to play a game, and that's to win. And that's what I would do.
It's a funny thing that Pax mentioned in any close situation, full count, the umpire is going to side with the pitcher who has a perfect game. We had a debate question, which we answered whether Yogi Berra, tagged when he tagged Jackie Robinson stealing home. I always wondered what it was. Yogi always swore Jackie Robinson was out, shouldn't have been called safe. But we looked at the replay and we all came to the conclusion he was safe. The umpire got it right. I would love to know for sure that last pitch of Don Lawson's that was called a strike. They asked Yogi, was it really a strike? And Yogi never really answered it, indicating it probably was a little high, and the umpire, just ended it that way. I mean, I wish if there's any way, Doc, you can get some footage. Maybe it's so hard, in that footage to conclude, was it really a strike or whatever. But listen, an umpire doesn't always do that. Umpires act on an impulse. Look at Jim Joyce to call it first base with Adams, Galarraga, I think.
Galarraga, yeah.
Galarraga, right. So you never know, in that situation. there was something with Kurt Schilling, wasn't there, that a batter bunted against him to break up his perfect game? I'm not sure what.
No, I was not. No, I think you're talking about the playoffs, right? And he had the bloody sock, and that's a different situation. They had asked Joe Torre, like, are you going to bunt on him because he can't move? And like, no, we're not going to. And I disagreed with that. Like, if the guy's out there pitching and he can't move and it's a playoff game, yeah, bunt on him all day long, win the game. Yankees didn't bunt on him and they lost.
So if the Yankees
but again,
are
like,
losing Doc, wait, let me ask you, they're losing 4-0. Playoff game, 2 outs in the 9th inning. Pitch has a perfect game. You have any problem with the Yankees bunting to get a run on to try to get something going? Playoff game, 4-0.
Let's go back to 78. I think it depends on the player, right? Reggie Jackson comes up. Billy Martin gives him the bunt sign. Reggie's not a bunter. He pops it up. Billy Martin takes the bunt sign off. Reggie says, you insulted me. I'm going to bunt anyway. And he eventually pops out. He gets suspended. Then Steinbrenner, then Billy Martin, says the whole thing about convicted and one's a liar and all that, and he gets fired or he resigns or whatever, creating all that controversy in 78. But Reggie Jackson isn't the guy who's going to bunt. So if the Yankees are losing in the 9th inning of a playoff game and they're down by 4 runs and Aaron Judge is up, I don't want Aaron Judge bunting. He's not a bunter. That's not his game. If it's Andrew Benintendi, yeah, maybe I'm okay with him bunting to try to get on. But if it's Giancarlo Stanton, I don't want Giancarlo Stanton bunting to try to get on. He's got to drive the ball, play your game. And I think that's part of what the argument is. If your game is to bunt, all right, maybe you bunt. If your game's not to bunt, then don't. If you have Aaron Judge bunting just to break up a perfect game, it just feels cheap.
And that's where this comes into play, because Aaron Judge isn't going to be batting 7th, 8th, or 9th. And if you're in a perfect game, that's who you're facing in the last inning.
Yeah,
so you are going to be
bring
getting
him off the
guys.
bench. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So unless he didn't play that day and he's going to be a pinch hitter, you're going to be facing the 7th, 8th, and 9th hitter. And typically those guys are not going to be the best anyways. Because the truth of the matter is, it's hard to put down a bunt even in Major League Baseball. So when you go 2 strikes and now you get the bunt sign's got to come off anyways because you don't want to bunt out. So I kind of feel that it's not where Mac is saying, hey, you try to get on whatever you can. These guys in the bottom half of the order, the bottom quarter of the order, are not going to, like I said, they're going to do whatever they can to try to get on. And I agree with that. That means if the pitch is close and you want to let it go by to see if they call it ball 4, then you could do that. But then you're leaving it up to somebody else to make that decision. And I feel that when it comes to a perfect game, different than a no-hitter, because a no-hitter at that point you are back up in the top part of the order. Unless you've had like 18 walks in that game where you could be anywhere else. But realistically, you're then now facing the top 3 or 4 hitters. If you're Ricky Henderson and you want to bunt to get on, I think that's okay. And because ultimately you are trying to spawn your team to do it. But if you're down 4-0 in the 9th inning, playoffs or not, because I remember there was a no-hitter held by Holiday in the playoffs against the Reds, and they didn't try to bunt to get on in the 9th inning. You know what I mean? Because they were hitters. They were trying to hit the ball. They wanted to be able to break this snide. And that's where I kind of feel that's where the history and the precedents get set.
I just want to say Mac should be annoyed at you, Pax, because Mac is a New York Giants fan in football. And the year before last, the Giants would have been in the playoffs if the Eagles played to win. Mac's a proponent of a team always playing to win. And the Eagles tanked it. They showed no heart. They showed no character. They played their backups. They showed no pride whatsoever. And as a result of that, they handed the game to the Washington football team. That was their name at the time. And Washington got into the playoffs, and the Giants didn't.
And that's okay, because that next following draft, we then traded with the Dallas Cowboys and got their player that they wanted to, so they could cry twice as hard.
You didn't play to win. You didn't live up to Mac's philosophy.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm so used to hearing Giants fans crying about that and many other things that I'm used to it. The tears just always are flowing with New York Giants fans.
I'm a Jet fan. I have nothing more to say.
Yes.
You know what, and I know that this question, I'm gonna hit a quick diversion here because I mentioned something. I've been thinking about this for a little while, and I want to get your guys' opinion. I think it's a great debate question. In football and in baseball, it's like obviously the umpires and the referees have a lot to say on how that game really goes. And really, they have the same type of situation going on, different than hockey, because hockey is a little bit of a different sport. But basketball, you could say, is the same thing. The referees in football, obviously, they know what the point spread is, they know what the over under is, and then they can control whether a game's getting out of hand or not. Do you feel that umpires or referees take that into consideration as they're calling a game?
Can
They
I say
shouldn't.
something? Wasn't it the case where what was his name? Tim Donaghy,
Tim
basketball.
Donaghy, Delaware County's own Tim Donaghy. He lives not that far away from me.
Okay, so he supposedly, correct me if I'm wrong, he had deliberately made some bad calls because he was, gambling or this or that. I don't know the exact
He was
details.
shading points. He was shading
points towards the Lakers when they played the Sacramento Kings in the playoffs. And the Lakers won the deciding game in overtime. So can I say this? Had he been on the up and up, Sacramento would have won. So the Lakers wouldn't have had the 3 championships in a row. Sacramento probably would have been the NBA champions. Is that fair to say? I'm asking.
I don't know that series well enough, but possibly. I mean, he was convicted. He was convicted and kicked out of the league for shading points, not just for that game, for a lot of games. So he was getting paid off by bookies, and that's it. Really put a black eye on the NBA and refereeing in general in the NBA. So yes, I mean there was a scandal about that, and they had to brush that really under the rug, and he was the one that took all the blame because he wasn't the only one that was doing it.
Didn't that happen in college too? I mean, wasn't there a team? I don't know if it was Duke. I might be saying it wrong. That was also there was a player there that was missing easy free throws and shots where they came down hard on him too, and they ended up I don't know, firing the refs and suspending players and stuff like that. I seem to remember something like that.
Possibly. I mean, it's possible, but I'm talking about. I'm not even talking about where you're throwing games or they where the referee is determining the outcome of the game. I'm talking about keeping it within points. And does the NFL referees say, okay, this is supposed to be a fairly close game. It's starting to get out of hand. We're going to start to make some calls to maybe, all right, so on 3rd down, they get the 1st down. We're going to call holding on here so that they have to do it again. And ultimately, they got to see if they can make the 1st down again. If they make it, great. If they don't make it, at least you've shaded to try to make it a closer game. And do you think that actually happens more frequently than not because these referees or these umpires, where we talked about, where the umpire on a pitch that may be fairly close and the guy's got a no-hitter going, that he's calling it a strike rather than a ball, where normally it would be a ball, but it's close enough and he's calling it a strike now?
I don't think they think of that at all. I mean, I could understand sometimes that suspicion. There was a game, wow, this must have been during Pete Rozelle's tenure when he was the commissioner, so we're talking like 30 years ago, where one team kicked a field goal at the end of the game. They were getting shut out, but but the field goal put their team inside the point difference. It had an effect on the gambling, and the coach had to answer to the commissioner. And he explained, I have a young team. I'm trying to build their confidence. I didn't want them getting shut out. So that explanation was accepted, even though the field goal itself was meaningless. I don't think the refs take that into account. I mean, I think they just officiate the game. Are they aware of it in the back of their mind? I don't know. I hope not. I don't think they really are. Or they pay, too careful attention to that. but it could be potentially a big problem.
So
Yeah, I hope not. Oh, go on, Mac.
no, go ahead, Doc. I cut you off. Go.
Well, I think I cut you off, but basically, I hope that the integrity of the referees and the umpires is above all that. I think this is, and we talked about this a couple of times on this program. I think this is the big danger that sports is getting into with all these betting apps and all this money that's going around, that the potentiality for someone somewhere to make a call based upon a betting line, because it's so prevalent in the sport. The sports worked so hard for so long to keep themselves away from betting. And the way that they've now embraced it so wholeheartedly that it's every single commercial, it seems, and every single thing is brought to you by DraftKings or this thing or that one or this book or that book, and it leaves open the possibility, the greater possibility, that something like this could happen, I think, and I think it's a danger to the integrity, because once a sport's integrity is gone, it's very hard to get it back.
But with Doc, we all get caught up on it. Let's say hypothetically, you and I were in Vegas right now, we'd be walking by, and we walk by the sports book out of curiosity. We'd be looking at the odds, and as sports fans, are these odds validated? And all of a sudden we see, wow, you can get 50-1 on the Yankees winning the World Series. For fun, you might put down $100 at 50-1. You figure, because it's fun, you figure I'm throwing away $100. I'm just having fun. I'm not a gambler, but I'm just having fun because I'm in the game myself now. I have like an interest. It's like people buy lotto tickets all the time. Maybe that's a
I guess I don't buy lotto tickets. I gotta just, in my brain, I'm not throwing $100 there. I just won't do it. I don't want to do it. No, it's $100 I'm never gonna have again. So it's just, I wouldn't.
Well, you wouldn't do it. You'd start walking away, and then I tell you the Yankees just got Juan Soto. Then you'd stop and maybe turn around. And say,
I still wouldn't do
it.
it.
I guess I can afford the 100.
Yeah. Maybe $1. Maybe I'd do $1. My mom asks me all the time, like, let's bet pizza or something on this game. I'm like, I'm not betting, Mom. I won't bet with you.
So guys, what questions are we on now? Aaron Rodgers or NFL player pressure? On Aaron Rodgers?
Well, should they call out the play? He called out his wide receivers publicly. Is that okay to do?
Right.
I mean, then to me, I'll start it off since, I'll pick up on it quickly. I feel it's okay. This is Aaron Rodgers. He's a leader. He wants to get the guys going. These are new receivers. He has a bunch of them, and they're not getting it done. I mean, they're not on the same page, and there's urgency. The NFL season isn't long. Think of it. In a few months, it's going to be over. It's going to all be, when you think of it, the season zips by. Before you know it, you don't have a lot of time. And now we're at crunch time as far as the NFL teams go. They've got to gel. Because if you're going to wait till the halfway point to gel, I mean, you're going to be 3-5, 3-6, and then you're going to have to play nearly perfect to make the playoffs. So he's getting on them, and it's tough love. And if those guys are too fragile that they can't take the criticism in any way, it's bad. Listen, if you're an established receiver, you've been in the league a while, you don't need to hear that type of stuff be called out publicly, okay? But for these new guys, they got to accept it. They're just lucky to have a spot in the league, and they're playing with the great Aaron Rodgers, one of the great quarterbacks in NFL history. He's earned the right to call players out. All quarterbacks have their own stuff. This isn't Jalen Hurts calling out receivers. Could you imagine Jalen Hurts calling out the Eagle receivers? Daniel Jones calling them out? They'll say, who the heck are you? What have you accomplished in this league so far? Worry about yourself, and we'll get our act together. But this is Aaron Rodgers. He's fully entitled to publicly call these guys out.
What do you guys think?
I will disagree. I think as a team, Aaron Rodgers can yell at them. He can tell them how disappointed he is in them, but that kind of stuff belongs in the locker room. He doesn't. You don't air your dirty laundry to the media and out. That's not a way to build cohesion. That's not a way to build trust. Jack, what if you had a principal who was an established principal, maybe even won principal of the year, and he decided like he needed more out of you as a phys ed teacher, and he decided to call you out publicly because he wasn't happy with your lesson plans? You'd be like, what? If you had a problem with me, call me into your office and close the door and we'll talk about it, but not public. Don't do it in public, right? And the same kind of thing. Like he has every right to tell his receivers, you have to step up your game and get better, but you don't do it in public. That's just not where you do it. You do it in private. That's what a leader would do, right? By making these guys and humiliating them, because it's not just you're getting humiliated by Jalen Hurts or Daniel Jones. You're getting humiliated by Aaron Rodgers. That's even worse. So no, it does not belong in the public.
Doc, they're humiliating Aaron Rodgers because the dirty laundry's out there for everyone to see. They're running wrong routes. They're dropping
but you know
balls.
that.
And
but you know that,
and they're making Aaron Rodgers look bad. So he's calling.
No.
Out.
If Aaron Rodgers throws a good pass and the guy drops it, you go, look, Aaron Rodgers threw a good pass and the guy dropped it. I just read a book about Johnny Unitas, and Johnny Unitas would have never called out his players in public like that. He was always better than that. He would have done it in private, quietly.
Well, he had guys like Raymond Berry, John Mackey. He had like great players, Johnny Unitas, but
still, the point is.
But Devontae Adams, who just left the Packers as a free agent to sign with the Raiders, he's a great receiver. Aaron Rodgers never called him out. He never called out, Donald Driver, these type guys. He's just, they're rookies in there. He wants to get them going.
There's a way to do it.
Right. The Packers picked up Sammy Watkins in the offseason, a good receiver with a lot of potential. Aaron Rodgers didn't call him out because he's been around. He's kind of getting on these guys. Coach Mac coached teams. I'm sure Mac, wouldn't disapprove of his star quarterback calling out receivers.
Well, I mean, I might. I mean, that's my job, not his. So, I mean, if he's going to call out anybody, receivers, wide receivers, linemen, that's my responsibility to make sure they're doing the job right. Even though he's my field captain. So, I mean, you can't, there are different players, you push different buttons, right? You got the guys that are really need a good kick in the ass, and the other guys you got to kind of pull to the side and pat them on the head. And, it's like almost being a psychologist, Jack. You got to know the person. You get to know the person during practice before you take action on them. So if you're going to call somebody out, you got to make sure that he's going to respond to it, because, it does no good if you call him out and he just either, sits on a sideline and cries or leaves. So, I mean, it's a very, I don't want to say difficult, but it's very hard to bring a point home when you're dealing with a young kid. So, I mean, yes, you got to be hard sometimes, and no, sometimes you got to be like their mom. So, I mean, it's very tough to do.
All right, I guess I get to say here, and I am divided on this whole thought process. First off, the fact that he's Aaron Rodgers is inconsequential to me. I feel that realistically, Aaron Rodgers, Nicolas Cage, Jordan Love, whoever it is, making that statement out there. The first and foremost thing that I think of right away is I don't talk bad about the family outside of the family. The family is always the most important, and that's kind of how I feel about that across the board. So in that alone, you should never go outside the family and talk about them like that. You know what I mean? It's just you supposed to you're part of this family. You don't want this to reflect, and ultimately, the moment you start to say something, if you are the one that's causing some of the problems later on, it's the scrutiny gets back thrown. So I know that it's Aaron Rodgers, and is he really going to be able to get that scrutiny? Well, it depends on how often they play San Francisco, because he can't seem to win those games at all. Yeah. That being said, it's preseason, and I feel that when you listen to his statements and you listen to what he was got going on, I didn't look at it as severe as the media made it out to be. I know that he was being critical of his wide receivers, and he was trying to get a point across that came across poorly. I think that it got blown up out of proportion by the media, as things always do, and ultimately the message got misconstrued in the process. So much so that they had to have a meeting about it because all the wide receivers started to get a little angry about the fact that they were being villainized in the media, a la Aaron Rodgers. And I don't think that was the purpose of what he was trying to do. Now, is Aaron Rodgers the best guy in the world? And is he going to be put in a great light because of this? No. It's because of his personality and because of the way that he does things that things get blown up out of proportion in the first place that way. So I feel that because it was him is the reason why it got to be such big news. If this was Daniel Jones doing it to his receivers, it wouldn't have gotten as much news because Daniel Jones doesn't have the type of clout that Aaron. And even though he's only won one Super Bowl, he's got the keys right now to that entire franchise. And he knows it, and everybody in Green Bay knows it. So when God speaks, everybody's going to listen, and that's what they've elevated him to. His pedestal is really high right now, and because of that being so high, he gets that the ability to do those types of things over top of the coach. You know what I mean? Because the coach really should have been like, yeah, I think what he meant to say was this, rather than, that's all it would have taken. It was like, hey, no. Let's get it right back to where we're talking about. He's a competitive guy. He wants his receivers to understand the competition level in the NFL is not back in college. It's a whole different game over here, and we got to make sure that we're doing things the right way. They got to be very crisp. They got to do things NFL, no longer college. And I feel that was the message he was trying to get across as poorly as it came across.
They did have a meeting afterwards, Pax, like with the receivers, Aaron Rodgers, the coaches. They all sat down, and the other receivers who Rodgers didn't criticize was at the meeting, and they explained the way Rodgers does things and how it benefited them, in the past. So like Randall Cobb.
Right. So, and I feel that I'm a little torn on this. Like I said, you don't talk bad about the family outside the family. But there again, I also know that if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I need to choose my words a little bit better than maybe coming across. Because he said when it comes to communication in ways, he fails miserably sometimes. And maybe it's all those, the Asamoah, whatever the hell that thing that he's taken, that special healing drug that his girlfriends give him and stuff like that. Maybe he was on a little bit of that, too much of that, and that's why he was able to talk about things a little funny. But realistically, it's like I said, it's because he's on this high pedestal that it even got made into big news. I think if this happened short of, like Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, that it wouldn't be non-news for anybody else.
Okay. I think that says it all. So we got one more question, guys, about the NFL players that have the most pressure to have a good season. And why don't you go ahead and start us off, Jack?
I mean, when you look at the NFL, everyone always has pressure to have a good season, but who is most under the microscope? Okay, and then number guys under the microscope, don't get me wrong, you can have several different answers. I'm going to go with Russell Wilson. Now, Russell Wilson is going to be in the Hall of Fame. No matter what he does this year, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. But the reason I think Russell Wilson is under the most pressure, because he has to be a savior of an organization for the Denver Broncos. He's coming there. There's tremendous enthusiasm, and they also say you never have a second chance to make a first impression. Well, this is it. If Russell Wilson comes in and the Broncos are mediocre, the whole franchise is going to get deflated. This is an established quarterback ready to go. He wanted a trade, even though he didn't quite force his way out of Seattle. He let the Seahawks know he wouldn't mind if he was traded, and they mutually agreed upon the deal, and the Seahawks got a good return. And Denver gave up a lot, a little of their future, because they're going for it now. They want to be a Super Bowl contender right now, and they're in a very tough division. So I just feel with Russell Wilson, this is it. No excuses, okay? No excuses at all. If Denver doesn't at the very least make the playoffs, at the very least, if they go 7-10, 8-9, come short of the playoffs, chances are Russell Wilson's quarterback play is going to be no better than average, and the whole fan base of Denver is going to be deflated. I mean, completely. So I think that's the guy that's under the most pressure, because he's really carrying the franchise this year, the hopes and dreams of the Denver Bronco fans.
How about you, Doc? Who do you think? The NFL player
Yeah,
that have them.
I gave a whole list of names, and yeah, Jack.
I got one.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my connection was jumping in and out. Jack said you can only give one, so I have to then pick one, which is, of course, the question: which one player? So Jack is 100% right. You know, the guy I'm going to think about is Mac Jones. I think we're all thinking quarterbacks because that's the position where you see a lot of pressure. The Bill Belichick and the Patriots want to prove that they can win without Tom Brady, obviously. And Mac Jones had a pretty good rookie year, and they had a pretty good sophomore year. They made the wild card game or whatever last year. And so the idea is that the Patriots have to continue to make a big step forward. And if the Patriots don't make a big step forward this year, does that indicate that maybe Mac Jones isn't the guy who's going to get them to the next level? So I think there's a lot of pressure on the Patriots. I think there's a lot of pressure on Mac Jones to take this thing to the next level and to get the Patriots back where their fan base and their ownership and their coach feels they belong, and that's competing for a championship. And because of all that, the pressure is going to be immense on Mac Jones to take the next big step forward.
Interesting. Pags, you got somebody?
Well, I mean, short of, I'm going to try to stay away from Jalen Hurts because this
Oh,
is
that was a natural, Pags.
but I'm staying away from that. I told you I'm staying away. I kind of go the opposite way. I feel that, first off, I agree with you on the Russell Wilson part, that it's going to be an effect on everything. To be honest, I feel like the most pressure in the NFL right now is on Tua. That's who I think. He's got all the weapons in place now, but he's not been that good of a quarterback. It's really his last opportunity, and it could be his last opportunity, or else be regulated to holding a clipboard for the rest of your NFL career. Because that's kind of what will wind up happening. If he doesn't do it this year, he's going to be clipboard holding wherever team he goes to. And I feel that because of everything else that occurred in Miami, along with the owner being suspended and having these big aspirations, but yet, we're paying you guys to lose and things like that, that there is an entire city fact that the Dolphins are supposed to be a fairly good team this year, that they strengthened their defense. They got the parts they need for the quarterback to be able to excel. Is he going to be able to excel? Like I said, everybody doesn't think that it's going to work for him. And it's only going to be him that makes that decision one way or another on whether he's going to be the guy moving forward for this franchise. And I think that if there's any more pressure, short of Jalen Hurts, because like I said, that's a slam dunk for me, but I think that he's the one that has the most responsibility to be able to be better than what he's been, and he's got that type of pressure on him right now.
That's a great answer, too. That's a great answer. Of course, I got to go with Daniel Jones. I mean, the expectations are huge right now. They got a brand new GM, a brand new head coach. They went out and got some they drafted well. They got some good veterans in there now. And now it's up to him. Can he hold on to the ball? Can he at least hold on to the ball so he's not giving up fumbles all the time? And, the defense has improved. Again, another great coach came over Baltimore, Winkendale or whatever they call him. This team right now is built to win. You may think it's funny, but they are. And the whole situation in New York right now, if Daniel Jones and Saquon can't do it, they're gone. There is no way they're going to be with the Giants. So if you look at the players they picked up, if you look at the whole new organization wanting to win now, and you look at the players around him, which he does have talent out there, if Daniel Jones can't do it this year, there is no way that he's staying with the Giants. I mean, he'll be lucky to get on another team. He may be out of the NFL. So the pressure is on Daniel Jones. There's no doubt about it, to win with this team right now. I can't see any quarterback in a worse position than he is. So that's my answer.
Every answer is a good answer. All the selections you made are good selections. I'm thinking you look around the whole league. Listen, Aaron Rodgers is under a lot of pressure. Won Super Bowl his whole career. People are saying he should have more, and he feels the pressure. That's why he probably called out the receivers. But no one expects the Giants to make a Super Bowl run. So league-wise, Daniel Jones isn't under that type of pressure. Individually, he is. If he wants to be the Giant quarterback of the future, he's got to perform this year. Doc, you're right about Mac Jones. If he takes a step backwards and it becomes messy in New England, that's not going to be good for his career. So he's under that type of pressure. Tua, I like that a lot because he's under a lot of league-wide pressure. More so right now than Russell Wilson, because more people expecting Russell Wilson to perform. He's less of a question mark than Tua. And they got to a Tyreek Hill, the great, wide receiver, the Chiefs, and he has Jalen Waddle. He has the weapons there, Tua. But if Tua just improves, he doesn't have to improve a lot, improve somewhat, they're going to continue to go forward with Tua as the quarterback as long as he gets better. But Russell Wilson has to do it winning-wise. No ifs or buts about it. They just have to make somewhat of a Super Bowl run because Russell Wilson is coming to the Broncos as a star. Tua is still a bit of a project for the Dolphins, okay? So that's how I'm looking at it, a little different. But listen, everyone in the NFL is under a lot of pressure. We could say Lamar Jackson if he wants the big contract with the Ravens. But Doc is right. We focus on the quarterbacks for some reason. Maybe a better question could have been which non-quarterback is under the most pressure. I wouldn't know off the top of my head.
And there you go. And listen, why don't we take a quick commercial for that? Because I know of somebody who's under tremendous amount of pressure to be able to succeed, who's not a quarterback. And he was going to be my answer, and I chose against it because I just don't like talking about them in the first place. So let's go to a quick commercial break. And once we come back, we'll revisit this question on non-quarterbacks. It'll give you guys a few minutes to think about it. So we'll be back right after these commercial messages.
The Hometown Foundation is excited to bring back the Dream Ride experience, August 26th to the 28th at Connecticut's Farmington Polo Club. Join us in celebrating the accomplishments of our Dream Riders while enjoying live music, a car and motorcycle show, family fun zone, pet adoptions, canine demonstrations, the Fireman's Chili Cook-Off, and much, much more. Get your tickets today.
Mr. Green?
Yeah.
You need any help? I just want you to know, I think you're the best ever.
Yeah, sure.
Want my Coke? It's okay, you can have it.
No.
Really, you can have it.
Okay.
A Coke and a smile makes me feel good, makes me feel nice.
Be around.
That's the way it should be. I like to see
Hey, kid.
the whole world is smiling with me. Coca-Cola as life. Have a Coke and
Thanks, Mean Joe.
smile.
When you drive to Wendy's and order a single, you get more beef than the Whopper or the Big Mac. At Wendy's, you never have to ask, where's the beef?
You know, one of the best things about being an ex-big leaguer is getting freebies to the game. Call the front office, bingo. And once these fans recognize me, I probably won't even have to pay for my light beer from Miller. Down it, I love them. These fans know I drink light because it's less filling and it tastes great. Good seats, huh?
You're in the wrong seat, buddy. Come on.
Oh, I must be in the front row.
Come on.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
Good seats, hey, buddy. He missed the tag. He missed the tag.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboys fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready. I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, get any?
And we are back to the Mac and Jack Show, the Saturday debate show. As I figured out how to do the music again, music back interlude. I have such a hard time with that part. There's always, when you listen to Mac and he's running the board, he's got that music already keyed up. His commercials ain't the best, but he's got the music all keyed up. So at least where I got the commercials kind of in tune. We're going to go back to the question that we went before the break in terms of players that have the biggest.
Before you go on, Pax, as my producer said, we got to kind of stretch it out and slow it down. We're running right through this stuff. We got plenty of time left, so let's kind of take it easy over the next hour.
I agree. So, and I've got a little bit to say about this one specifically. When we talk about non-quarterbacks who are having who are up against it, we'll call it, who are need to be able to have a good season specifically. I think of the first person that comes to my mind is Zeke Elliott. That this guy has been, for the last few years. Last year was a horrible year, and the fact that he was still the lead running back when you had Pollard on that, on that staff, who I thought was by far a much better running back last year. And now, again, he's going to be taking second fiddle to Zeke Elliott, who's supposedly coming back healthy and is ready to begin this season and really take it apart here. I feel that if anybody has got a lot of pressure to start to succeed right now because of the money he's getting paid and the team that he is on, that with Elliott, probably more than most quarterbacks are in the league, because realistically, I mean, I don't think he's earned any bit of his money of the contract that he had signed. Did he get paid maybe for some of the stuff in the past? Yes. Is Dak Prescott also in the mix of that? Does Dak Prescott have to do? Absolutely. But as a non-quarterback, with this question being asked, Zeke Elliott is by far, I think, more than everybody else, somebody who's got to be able to perform this year, or else they are going to be, I think, on the outside looking in.
No, Ezekiel Elliott is an excellent choice because that he popped into my head when we went to the break. And I think we could basically all agree on that. It's a compelling question. Which NFL franchise is under the most pressure to win the Super Bowl this year? Now, a number of them are under pressure. It's either Super Bowl or they're going to be disappointed. But that's an interesting question. Let me ask you guys, is it the Dallas Cowboys who haven't been there in ages? Is it the Kansas City Chiefs looking to regain their throne? It's not the Giants. They're under no pressure winning the Super Bowl. That would be a major joke if they did. And the Jets.
I think all the New York teams probably fall into that category.
No, not at all. None of the New York ones. And the Eagles aren't under big pressure. They're under pressure to improve, take more of a run. But who's under real pressure? I think the Packers are under a lot of pressure. The Cowboys are under pressure too with Jerry Jones, always under pressure, but that's interesting. Is it the defending champion Rams? I would think not because they won it. Who would you say, one team in particular, if you had to pick, who would you say is under the most pressure to get it done this year?
Let somebody else answer first.
Is it Cleveland? I forgot to mention Cleveland with this whole Deshaun Watson saga. Are they under a lot of pressure as an organization to win, just to kind of have a little separation PR-wise from what's going on with Watson?
Well, I mean, you could even throw Cincinnati in there, right? I mean, this is a team that just went to the Super Bowl, almost won it. They had a great year. And I think the expectations for them right now are extremely high. So if you're going to look for a team that's under a lot of pressure, coaching staff and the city itself, I mean, you'd have to think about Cincinnati Bengals. They're supposed, well, I don't know if they're supposed to be, but they're one of the most dynamic teams in the league next to Kansas City, maybe San Diego, there's a lot of them. But I mean, I would think that if you're a Bengals fan right now, you're expecting them to go right back to the Super Bowl. And a lot of times that don't happen. They get that Super Bowl where they call it, where they fall the following year down. This is a real iffy situation for Cincinnati. I myself, I think that they'll be pretty good this year and they'll do well. But that sophomore jinx, I think, is what they call it. You've made it to the top, and there's nowhere else to go but down. So if you got the talent they have, you should be going back, and there's no doubt about that. So I think Cincinnati's under a lot of pressure right now.
How about Buffalo?
Good one.
Right? And isn't there talk about the franchise possibly moving, and they're trying to take a big step forward, and they almost made it. And boy, if they can't sustain it, are they going to be able to even stay in their city? That's a lot of pressure, no?
Yeah.
Well, that's a great selection, Doc. A great one. Now that I was going to say Green Bay, but now that I think of Buffalo, if they don't win it this year, when are they going to win it? I mean, they've been knocking on the door already, and them in Green Bay, I think, are the two teams knocking on the door. Wouldn't that be a great Super Bowl, the Packers against the Bills? But, wow, yeah. Those are great selections there.
Yeah, and I would say the Bills probably more than everybody else. I kind of feel like I'm going to go a little bit of a different way here. First off, I think that the Chargers are in that mix, that they are under a lot of pressure. And I think that, I don't know if it's Super Bowl laden or not, but I feel like that they need to get to the playoffs. They can't just play for the tie at the end of the season.
We're talking about Super Bowl packs.
I understand that, but you're talking about how the Browns aren't. I think the Browns next year are going to be under that type of pressure. I think this year is the gimme, because that of all is occurring and that they are going to wait to see what it's going to be like to have Deshaun Watson for a full season rather than for just 6 games at the end of a season. So even though they may get there, I think that the Chargers are going to have to absolutely take that next big step. So although you're talking about Super Bowl and under the pressure of the Super Bowl, yeah, everybody needs to win the Super Bowl. But I think that you're talking about those upper tier teams. So when you're talking about that, there's only really Buffalo and possibly you could put Dallas in that mix. Because I think Green Bay took a step back because of the people that they lost. I feel that Kansas City, you could kind of argue that is in that upper echelon, and they have to do it because they're at that peak, that they are in that upper tier of teams that should go to the Super Bowl. That if Kansas City went, if Buffalo went, if Dallas went, if Green Bay went, those teams are expected to make it. The Rams went. Cincinnati, if they went, all of those teams that we just mentioned are in that tier 1 category that it wouldn't be a surprise if they made it. It's the tier 2 teams that I feel need to take the biggest step. And you have a team now, it's not San Diego anymore, this is LA. So now you just had your crosstown rivals, for lack of a better word to call it, win the Super Bowl. And you saw how many people were there for that Super Bowl and how many, the tens of hundreds of people that flooded the streets after they won. You have a chance and an opportunity to take over that city by having a really back and a good team behind it. You got great defense because you just got Khalil Mack to be able to help, anchor that defense and maybe get everybody moving in the right direction. And a lot of pressure to be able to succeed right now in a city that you're not even sure whether is the Rams, that their big saying is that it's their house. Well, you could take that whole saying away by being able to do what they just did last year. And that's what I kind of feel like, that out of everybody, that, you're right, Buffalo is a great choice. Dallas is a great choice. I think that's LA Chargers are also under that same pressure and scrutiny, especially being in such a tough division. I mean, you got a division that's supposed to be the best in football right now, with everybody who's in that division. So I don't know. I think that it would go. I think that they are under immense pressure, much more than like Cleveland, where Cleveland I think is getting a gimme this year because they're going to worry about next year.
Let Doc get in here for a minute, Doc. What do you think? I mean, is it San Diego? Is it Cleveland? Or is it Buffalo?
I'm going to stick with Buffalo. I think when a team like Cincinnati makes it to the Super Bowl, I think, Mac, you hit it right on the nose. The hope and the dream is that they make it back, of course. But I think once you make it to the Super Bowl, there is the expectation that you went all this as far as you can go. And getting back there is very rare. And you almost buy yourself, not that anybody will be satisfied if they don't make it, but you almost buy yourself a year or so to say, hey, there's the natural regression that's going to happen. And so you're probably not going to make it the next year in a row. You want to make it, but if you don't, people say, disappointing, but look how close they were the year before. We'll go get them next year. But I think the Buffalo Bills, obviously, they make it. And there's so many other factors around the city and things like that this is really the year that they've got to do it. So I'm going to put the pressure on the Bills more than the Bengals on that.
Guys, if we widen the scope to all the sports, are the New York Yankees
do we have to?
The most pressure?
Do we have
all
to?
Teams by far, to finally at least get to the World Series minimum. If they don't win it, at least get to the World Series. Are they under the most pressure? I would say yes, even though they're not going there. I don't see them as being good enough. I think the Yankee, as an organization as a whole, is under the most pressure. What do you guys?
I have my Saturday morning Yankee show here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. That comes on from 7 to 7:30, and I had a whole bunch to talk about today.
Nice plug.
And here are my notes. Thank you. And here are the notes that I didn't get to. I've said this on my Yankee show. I've said it on my blog. I've said it on the Monday night show, which comes at 9 p.m. on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network after the 7 p.m. Gloved Fish show with Jack Hirsch. But I don't think Aaron Judge is coming back. And we don't have to get into all the reasons. I could wax poetic about this for the next hour or two, but I don't think he's coming back. And I don't think the Yankees are making it this year. I think they've proven that over the last numbers of weeks since the beginning of July, late June, where they've been terrible. And as such, I think the window on the Yankees is just about closed on this group of players. If you look at the roster, you just go player by player. Is Anthony Rizzo going to be here in 2 years? No. Josh Donaldson? No. Aaron Hicks? No. Aaron Judge? I don't think so. Giancarlo Stanton's going to be older. Garrett Cole's going to be much older. You look at the team, you're like, how many guys in this group are going to be around? There's not a whole lot. And this was the year. Last year was the year. The year before was the year. This is when the core was peaking. And the Yankees didn't go all in. They let lots of super talent go to other teams. They could have signed some big free agents. They didn't. They always tried to find a different way around it. And look, we're smarter than everybody else, and we did it this way. And it didn't work. They hired a manager who had never coached or managed in the history of his life and said, we're going to give this guy the team that's a one win away from the World Series, and he's going to get them right back there, and he didn't. And so I think the Yankees are under a lot of pressure, but I think we're really – in a year, we're going to be saying, what do the Yankees have to do to get back to becoming a top quality team? Because I think we're going to have some down years coming real quick.
So you let Judge go. You say you pick up Soto, or you pick up another. Or you pick up another great pitcher. They still are there, Doc. I mean, they still got a chance to win. So I mean, you never know in baseball. You never know what rookies are going to come up from the farm system. You never know what veterans are going to come up and have a great year. So, I mean, you got a point, but I still think that everything turns in baseball and sports. And there's always that possibility that you pick up players that are just as good, if not better than the players you lost.
Could be. I think it's hard to find a player who's going to be better than Aaron Judge. I just don't see the Yankees making the biggest offer.
I want to criticize both Doc and Mac. You're going to criticize the two of you. This Aaron Judge thing, this fiasco. We debated this up, discussed it before the season began. You guys thought, the Yankees made such a wonderful, fair offer to Aaron Judge. He says he wants to be a Yankee his career. This is his chance to prove it. Everyone's going to say they want to stick with their team. No one's going to say they don't want to stick with their team. The Yankees blew it. The Atlanta Braves are a perfect example. They were a great model of signing a player a few years before he becomes a free agent. They're great talent. That's what teams do. You project who's going to be a great player for you based on a body of work that he's shown you. And you don't let him get to a couple of years within free agency. You just don't allow it. You make him a really good offer, and the player's going to think, I'm not going to be a free agent for a few years. This money looks great now. And you make basically a career deal with him. I forgot the name. I'm having a little moment. I'm forgetting the Atlanta Braves outfielder who's on track to be Rookie of the Year. They just signed him to like a 9-year contract, 10 years at good money that favors the team, like $9 million a year for 8 years. And then in year 9, it's a team option of $15 million. In year 10, it's a team option of $20 million. The team is getting a bargain. Are they taking a little bit of a risk? Yeah, of course you're taking a little bit of a risk. The Yankees actually did that with Aaron Hicks. It backfired. They overestimated Aaron Hicks' potential. But listen, it wasn't a bad deal what the Yankees did at the time. I don't mean to second guess him, because if Hicks had fully developed, he would have been worth more than $10 million a year. But they signed him for $70 million for 7 years. It was worth that gamble. But they should have done that with Aaron Judge. They would have had to give him big money, but they would have locked him up and made him a career Yankee. And in the offseason, they had one last chance a year away from free agency, and they didn't treat him like a free agent. The Yankees should have thought, this guy is going to have a great year. Let's make believe he's having a blockbuster year. What would we offer him at the end of this season if he has an incredible year? And put that money on the table. Offer him $37.5 million a year for 8 years. And Judge would have probably taken it as people because they would have thought, well, maybe we could do a little better, but this is close enough where, he wants to be a Yankee. The money's good enough. We'll get it done now. Yet the Yankees, I don't want to say lowball the guy like $30.5 million, but he could do substantially better on the free agent market with a big year. And the Yankees, they blew it in the Judge thing. But the thing about it now, the Yankees are going to bid on him once more when he's a free agent, whatever, and they're going to up their offer. But will it be good enough now? I don't think so. Hopefully it would be, but I don't think so. But whatever they're going to offer him in the offseason, which he's probably going to turn down, he would have probably signed for before the season.
I don't know if we can say that. I don't know if we know that Aaron Judge absolutely wanted to be a Yankee for life. Everybody just assumes that if the Yankees gave him enough money, he would have definitely stayed with the Yankees. How do we know that? The argument is the Yankees would have had to pay him a number of years ago. And a number of years ago, he had a good first year, and then he was hurt a lot. And unfortunately, he came to the major leagues at an older age than most of these other guys in their young 20s. He was in his later 20s. And he's always been this guy that there's been a question mark about how much you want to invest in a guy who's going to be in his 30s when you're paying him this big money stuff. I think the Yankees made him a great offer. I'm not changing my mind on that. I think it was a very fair offer. I don't think the Yankees are going to offer him a ton more, and I don't think they should. I think there's going to be a team that blows him out of the water. And on the other hand, I won't blame Aaron Judge one bit for taking that money. If there's a team that offers him 10 years at $40 million or 9 years at $38 million or any variation there, good for them. And I don't even care if it's the Mets. If the Mets get him, good for the Mets. Good for Aaron Judge. I hope you both do great. But if I'm the Yankees and I'm so close to that luxury tax every year, and that has been the reason why they can't get other talent, I'm not giving Aaron Judge 8 years at exorbitant dollars. I'm just not doing it because that's going to impact on my ability to get other players. And we all like to say, oh, my God, he's having a career year this year. And yes, he is. We have to keep him forever. But in 2030 or 2028, when he's hitting 240, which is a big possibility, and he has 22 home runs on the year and 78 RBIs, no one's going to say, oh, my God, I'm so glad 6 years ago he hit 58 home runs or he broke Roger Maris's record. That's so great. I'm glad he did that. Now they're going to be going like, this guy's eating up our salary and we can't get other good players because we're tied to this guy. So I don't think he's coming back. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But he's always been a California guy. Who's to say that in his heart he's never said, or he hasn't said, I want to go back to California and I want to play for the San Francisco Giants. Maybe that's always been his dream. And again, why not? Ken Griffey Jr. left Seattle to go play for the team he rooted for as a kid. Albert Pujols left the Cardinals. Everybody says Judge wants to be a Yankee for life. Why? Freddie Freeman just left the Braves. Now, granted, there were things around that, but he just left the Braves.
Well,
why wouldn't he?
That was a foul up. He didn't want to.
But he did, right? And Albert Pujols left. Albert Pujols left the Cardinals, right? Because another team offered him
an extra year on his contract.
He left the Cardinals because of money. And the Cardinals were smart and lucky that he didn't sign with them because he wasn't a good player after that.
About Judge wanting to be a career Yankee, he doesn't want to leave the Yankees. You would.
How do we know that?
That means he has to be unhappy with being on the Yankees, and I wouldn't think he would be unhappy.
Why does he have to be unhappy? Maybe he just wants to.
The Yankees are a prime organization. No player, unless he's struggling badly, wants to leave the New York Yankees. It's the type of team. It's a destination place. The Yankees, the Dodgers.
Andy Pettitte
would have gladly re-signed with the Yankees. They dragged out negotiations with him, and and they only came in at the end with an offer. And by that point, he got tired of negotiating and decided he was going to go home to Houston. And he came back. Pettit came back.
Right, but he left. I mean, all this, like, why would you leave the Yankees? Did Robbie Cano leave the Yankees?
Are you thinking do you think, let me ask all you guys, do you think players think legacy? Because Pettit messed up his legacy to a degree going to Houston for the 3 years. Sure, he got to a World Series. That was good. But had he stayed with the Yankees, prorate his victories that he got with the Astros in the 3 years and make those Yankee victories, it would have been approximate. That's what probably would have happened. He would have surpassed Whitey Ford as the winningest Yankee pitcher of all time. That would have been a heck of a legacy, guys. And that would have enhanced his Hall of Fame chances as well. And even if he didn't get in the Hall of Fame, I'm the winningest Yankee pitcher of all time. In some ways, that's as good as being in the Hall of Fame.
Right, but he left.
Let's get Pags in here for a minute. Pags, so you got a player on your team says he wants to be a Philly for life and he loves Philadelphia and, will do anything to stay in, and then they make him an offer and he leaves. So what kind of feeling would the Philly fans have with that player? I mean, here you are. This is a guy that you want to get his autograph. You want to take pictures with him. You want to be his best bud. And then he just ups and leaves and over maybe just a year on a contract. I mean, how would you, being the Philly sports guy and the fans there, react to something like that?
So thinking about this in a little bit of a different way, that one of the best players in hockey was desperate to try to come to Philadelphia. Didn't even give him an offer. They said that they weren't in the mix of this. And here's somebody who was willing to go out of their way, take a hometown discount to come to Philadelphia to play for the team that he rooted for his entire life, still roots for actively. So I understand a little bit about this in the opposite direction. When somebody leaves for money, listen, this is a business. And ultimately, we could be as angry or upset about it as fans, but the players are private contractors. That's what they are. They get contracts to play for their team, but ultimately they're getting 1099'd, and they are private contractors, so that once they have the ability, hey, I could do a job that's, as a contractor, I could do a job that's a $10,000 job. It's going to take me a month. Or I could take $1 million job and it's going to take me a month and a half. Let me decide on what I want to do. Now, of course, I'm being ridiculous on the numbers there a little bit, but that's what a player thinks. A player's like, okay, you're going to give me $10 million a year for 10 years. And this guy's going to give me $15 million a year for 8 years. Well, I may just do the 8 years because of the more money, or they're going to give me $10 million a year for 11 years. Well, that 11th year may mean something to me. When you start dealing with numbers like that in terms of the future, who knows what's going to happen at that point? So I don't think that plays a part. I think it becomes more of a internal type of situation. What does my family want to do? How do, when the years are inconsequential, when you're getting the same amount of money and it's only for another year, that means somebody else is going to weigh in on this and be like, hey, we could stay here because I love the schools. We're rooted here. It's more here than worry about that extra year. Or you could be like, you know what? It's not really a matter of the extra year. It's a matter of I don't like the schools here. I'd rather try somewhere else. We can go there and have a fresh start. Maybe I don't like the other wives of the team. Maybe I don't like maybe my kid's being bullied at school because I am who I am. Those are some of the things that we don't know and we'll never know. And that's where I think some of that goes into. So when a player just picks up and leaves for an additional year, it's not the year that's doing it. There's other factors that are involved. And as long as the money's not so significantly different, if somebody's going to give you $20 million more over the course of 20 years, that ain't a big deal. But if it's over the course of 7 years, well, that is a big deal. And that's where I kind of think that's where sometimes money will buy you your location. But when all is said and done and everything is equal, when you're comparing the oranges to oranges, at that point you have to go to everybody else in your family to make sure that they're okay with the move, what they want to do, and so on and so forth. And those are the things that I think that are not really spoken about very much at all in the midst of this. However, to go back to the question, because we were stuck on Yankees for way too long on this show, that in terms of other teams that I feel are under a significant amount of pressure to win a championship right now, I think more than anybody else in any other league. Again, I could take the Sixers, would be a little bit of a slam dunk, but I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go with the Houston Astros. And the reason why I say the Houston Astros is that they've been there twice since they've been accused of cheating and have not been able to win. And you've got a great team. They're second best team in baseball right now. And if there was ever a significant amount of pressure to try to prove the fact that one World Series that everybody believes that they cheated was not a farce, that they need to win another championship. And that's where I think to answer the original question, in every league, who's got the biggest responsibility or the biggest pressure to win right this second a championship, I think the Houston Astros fall into that category.
I'm not sure, because I understand what you're saying because of their reputation with the sign stealing. They want to prove they can win it, legitimately, supposedly, and it's debatable how legitimate it was before. But look at the guys that they, lost. Carlos Correa, George Springer, even Garrett Cole. It's easy to forget he was an Astro, on the teams. And they've transitioned wonderfully, to be as good as they have. They haven't missed a beat, even though they've lost star players. So I think just the idea that they're contending for it reflects very well on that team. So I don't think they're under quite the pressure because they've lost star players and are still continuing to perform.
I don't know. Doc, what do you think? I mean, if you're looking right now at a fan base and you're looking at a front office that really wants, to make a big step forward and has invested in players, and the farm system is really top notch now. I mean, are you looking to a lower team like a Orioles or a Pirates or a Tigers, or are you still looking at the bigger teams?
I think you're still looking at the bigger teams, and I think what you're doing is defining, in a sense, the New York Mets, who have invested a lot of money and brought in a new manager and are doing everything they can to reach that pinnacle. I think the San Diego Padres is a team that's doing the same kind of thing. The Dodgers continue to do it, obviously. These are teams that have a tremendous amount of pressure to win. I think the Astros to a certain extent, but I think the Astros fan base realizes, as Jack noted, that so many of the big-time players left. And I think the fact that they're doing as well as they are speaks a great deal to the organization and the way they bring up players and the way they mold their players, that you could lose George Springer and Carlos Correa and Garrett Cole and still be a team that's right in the thick of things. So I think all those teams are under a lot of pressure. I think the Yankees are under a lot of pressure, obviously. I think the Blue Jays, too, because they realized that this was their big chance and they haven't necessarily taken that big step forward. I think that's a team that's also under a great deal of pressure. The other teams like the Braves, if they make it, that's nice. They made it last year. Maybe they have another magical run in them. But again, like I said with the Bengals, I think if you make it to the World Series, and especially if you win the World Series, and then I'll tell you a quick story. I think what happens is, unless the fan base is totally irrational, you get a sense like, wow, they really did great last year, and I can't expect this, even as a Yankee fan the Yankee fans always expect them to win every year. I can't expect this every year. So that almost buys you a couple of years. Not that you want your team to do poorly, but it buys you at least a couple of years of goodwill that, hey, things happen, and we got a couple of breaks that year. I remember when the Yankees won the World Series in '96. I was so excited. And I said at the time, They finally did it. They finally did it. I've been waiting for this since 1978. And I hope they win it next year. I want them to win it next year. But if they don't, I get it. They're not going to win it every year. And they finally gave me another championship. And I think most fans think that way. Like, we got it. And that buys them some time off. So I think it's the teams that are on the – you don't agree? Well –
No, fans are so fickle. A year later they get on their teams. Unfortunately for you, you're a sensible individual. They give you a championship. You take it and you feel whole. It lasts for years.
You know what? You're making a good point, Jack.
But fans a year or two later are going to turn on the organization, get mad, they come under pressure. It's unfortunate. You're a Fans fan.
You're a great point. I remember somebody calling up after one of the Yankees World Series in the early or late 90s, early 2000s or whatever. They called up the next day on the Mike and the Mad Dog show or one of those things. And they're like, I'm worried. I'm worried about left field. And they're like, well, they just won the World Series yesterday. So you make a fair point.
We have a couple of debate questions. Let's not forget it. One of them's the Jeter thing. When he was captain of the Yankees, and the Yankee fans were booing A-Rod, there was a certain amount of pressure on Jeter to speak out to the fans on behalf of A-Rod to let up, and Jeter wouldn't do it. He wouldn't come to A-Rod's defense, and Jeter was the Yankee captain. As the Yankee captain, do you feel it was Jeter's obligation to speak on behalf of A-Rod, to tell the fans to cool it, he's doing the best he can? Instead, Jeter to say, well, the fans booed me, they booed Mariano, you got to work through it. They just briefly booed Jeter for like one game and Mariano for one game. And then the fans realized they were a little ashamed of themselves for doing that. So they cheered both guys the next time, but they continued booing A-Rod. Was it Jeter's responsibility as captain to get involved or not? What do you guys think? Mac, why don't you take it first?
Well, of course not. I mean, A-Rod's a big boy. He can take care of himself. I mean, he doesn't need somebody running in front of him to lead the way. I mean, the fans pay money to express their opinions, maybe too much sometimes, and things have got to be taken action on. But when you're playing for this type of organization with this type of history, and you're gonna go out there and be somebody's mommy, I mean, listen, they're all professional baseball players. They're all getting paid a lot of money. They all come from well, maybe not a great family, but they faced as what's the word I'm looking for? Adversity in the past. And A-Rod signed that big contract with the Rangers, right? $210 million, I think it was. And he didn't. Yeah, there you go. And he didn't perform well enough for that contract. So I expect that back then, when the Yankees were winning a lot of games, and A-Rod got moved to third, and Derek held on to shortstop. You can't have. I mean, why wouldn't the head coach be the one that stands up for him, or the GM, or whoever? Why does Derek Jeter got to hold A-Rod's hand? No, he's a man himself, and he should be able to express himself to the fans without the help of anybody else, Jack.
Pax.
So I think about this, and again, we're talking about the Yankees. I'm so tired of talking about the Yankees here. But I can equate this. I can equate this in a different way. There was a guy who played on the Philadelphia Eagles named Terrell Owens, who felt that his quarterback needed to step up and talk about how he deserved more money. And of course, that quarterback, being Donovan McNabb, said, I don't think I need to talk about that. Let him take care of his own business. And because he was not as outspoken, there put a big rift, not only in their friendship and being teammates, but on the entire team. And that ultimately, as the captain of the team, there should have been something that was said, even one way or another. That it's like, hey, listen, it's like I appreciate everything that you do here, but you are your own man. You signed your contract here. I need you to just be able to perform here. And listen, you got to trust the fact that they're going to take care of you later on. Now, of course, he didn't say that. In hindsight's 2020, in terms of being Monday morning quarterback, on how that could have changed tremendously. And I got to imagine that if Derek Jeter looks back on that time, that there was probably something that he could have done differently that would have made it a little bit more palatable. That in the midst of everything that was going on in that mix is too loud. That's what's deafening. And I think that was the case. In a case where him saying something fairly innocuous and small may have been enough to quell that entire situation. But because he chose not to, it became a bigger situation. Because again, this is the Yankees. And as the world turns, the drama that is the New York Yankees, to the Yankees faithful, it becomes a big story. This is Luke and Laura getting married, and this is JR getting shot, and things like that. That's what happens, and that's what becomes of these types of situations. And ultimately, I feel that it could have been done differently. That situation, along with the Eagles situation, both could have been handled differently. And in the absence of true leadership, the one who's the loudest, unfortunately, gets most of the spotlight, and it winds up being A-Rod and T.O., and it causes a rift. So maybe that was the reason why after 2009 they didn't win another World Series. Maybe that that caused enough of a ripple in the locker room to make it contentious enough to be able to not get back to the promised land. Because it definitely happened with the Eagles.
It's very possible.
Doc.
Yeah, I think it goes right back to the same thing we were talking earlier with Aaron Rodgers, right? A leader is going to protect his teammates, right? So I don't think Aaron Rodgers was right to call out his teammates in the public. In private, sure, do that. And Derek Jeter, when the fans were all over A-Rod, he didn't have to necessarily go out on the back page and say, don't boo my teammate. But when he was asked about it, instead of saying, yeah, I got booed too, he could have said, you know what? It's not right. I understand he's not performing well, but it doesn't make us perform any better and help us win when the fans boo us. I mean, he could say something like that, and that's innocuous and things like that. But when he was asked to stand up for a teammate, he basically walked away, right? He turned the other cheek or whatever, and he said, nah, I was booed. Mariano was booed. Let him get booed. And, I think Pags is right in this. And you look at this with lots of different teams. Great leaders step up for their teammates. And if you let your teammate out there to just wither on the vine, it doesn't project a great image. And it didn't project a great image for him. And could that then lead to hostility in the locker room and just some bad blood, or players not necessarily giving their best on a given day? And could that make the difference between winning or losing? Yeah, it can. And so, yeah, I don't think there would have been anything wrong with Derek Jeter going, hey, the guy's out there. He's trying his hardest every single day. I see him. He's working his hardest. Does he want to strike out? No, he doesn't. Does he want to make an error? No. But I can tell you, I'm glad he's playing third base. I'm glad he's the guy on my right. I love playing with him. Boy, that would have spoken volumes, but he didn't do that. He didn't do that at all. And it was, in a sense, that's an absence of leadership. There's no doubt about that.
Right. By the way, Tim McCarver felt Jeter was justified not saying anything. I remember that. I disagree. Jeter was the Yankee captain. I think being captain, I don't want to say it's a silly title. It means a lot to the players, but what do they do? They don't manage. They don't make up a lineup. Do they take out the lineup card once in a while? Do they make a speech on a special day once in a while? It's a silly title in reality. In all of sports, captain. It's the coach and the manager making the decisions. They have no real authority
I disagree.
It's an ego boost. That's all it is.
I wholeheartedly
Yeah, I disagree.
with you there completely. Ultimately,
You
the
disagree because
captain
Max
of the
made
team-
you the captain of the Northeast Streaming Network, and it didn't make me. I didn't care.
Well, I tell you and as a captain, you have to be the one that's in charge of making sure so everybody starts to look to you when you're named the captain. As well, and especially in hockey. So in hockey, everybody the team picks a captain, and that everybody starts to look to them. Everybody, the fandom, the team, everybody looks to the captain. Derek Jeter was the Yankees for a time. He was the face of the Yankees, and that makes him the captain, which means that what he says or doesn't say goes. So when he doesn't go ahead and come out and doesn't back up his teammate, when he says something like, "Hey, listen, we've all been booed before," put some mud on it, get back out there and play. That actually says a lot, and that starts to reflect on other people. Look at him like, really? This is how he's going to back me up too? I don't know. I don't know that I have the same type of confidence in him being my captain just by the way he handled something. And I know that this was an ego thing. It was a complete ego thing between him and A-Rod. That even while they played together, there was some tension there because everybody thought that, well, each one of them thought that they were the face. And realistically, the truth of the matter is that he was the face, and he was the one who needed to say something and didn't. And like I said, his silence was deafening.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, I feel Jeter should have said something because he had a title as captain. It was his obligation, I think, even if he didn't want to. I think you have to think, I'm captain. I'm obligated to do something, even though I don't want to do it. One last question, Pags. I mean, you lead this off because of time limitations, and you're the most important one to answer this, and you're the biggest authority by far. Which Philly championship team, and there haven't been many Philadelphia Philly championship teams, so which one, you don't have the smorgasbord that Doc, Mac, and myself have to choose from with the Yankees.
Pags, I think at this point you have to just say to Jack, which Jets championship team, which Jets Super Bowl team was the best one of all time? Now, think about it for a while. Let's really think about each of the Jets championship teams and all of that. You can take as much time as you want to whittle through them all and pick the best one.
When you're a franchise that's been around for 100
haven't even been back for the Super Bowl, the Jets, let alone winning it. But past the 1980 Philadelphia Phillies or the 2008 Philadelphia Phillies, you take it away.
Obviously both teams were great on their own. I felt that, in 1980, I was a young fan in general and learning about baseball and things like that. So this, it helped my fandom. The 1980 in general helped my fandom and helped evolve my fandom to what it is today. So that team is kind of very special to me in a lot of ways, where I got to look up to, and learn about Mike Schmidt, Greg Luzinski, Shake and Bake, Bob Boone, who's, son is actually coaching the Yankees, and Pete Rose and Steve Carlton and, all of the guys, Tug McGraw. And you think of those names, and it's just like how they were all put together. They couldn't get over the hump until Pete Rose got there. So very similar to the Moses Malone, that they weren't able to get over the hump until Moses got there for the Sixers. Pete Rose, without Pete Rose, and they said it even at the 1980, without him, they would not have been able to win that World Series. They would not have been able to get over the hump and get past the Astros, who were probably the better team on paper at that time. And it took everybody getting together to make that happen. In 2008, it was interesting how that all occurred because it was a little bit more ego driven, where again, the face of the Phillies had, was really Jimmy Rollins, but they had great talent. And then again, this was where it was a whole bunch of talent was brought together by Ed Wade, but he wasn't, as I like to call it, a wartime consigliere. So they had to bring in another guy, Pat Gillick, to put it all together and to get them over the hump. And literally, Pat Gillick even said it, that they didn't think that he were going to be able to compete for a couple of years, and the Phillies heard that. Pat Gillick was amazing at being able to get into these guys' heads some and picking out diamonds in the rough. Like Worth was a complete diamond in the rough when he got chosen. He was just this nobody who had a lot of speed. They put him out in right field, and he excelled. Shane Victorino, I mean, again, was just one of those guys that was just fire in the in the dugouts and on the ball field. Just the things that they had, the pieces that they had in place, finally were able to gel. Of course, there's Chase Utley, and then there's Ryan Howard, who had the best 4 years of any Major League Baseball player ever. He had the best numbers over a 4-year time span. So throughout all of history, and you could look it up.
Wow.
So it's
never. No.
That being said, if I had to choose between which one I think is a more, influential team, I'd have to probably say the 2008 team because of the pieces that they had there in that regard. But the 1980 team, like I said, and all of 1980 was absolutely amazing. Like I said, it's formulated the fandom that I have now.
Well, I just want to throw this by you, then the other guys quickly tell me your opinion. Didn't they have a harder road, the 80 Phillies, to win the World Series? They had to beat a seasoned Kansas City Royal team who kept knocking on the door for the few years before, for the most part, as opposed to the 2008 team. They had to beat the Rays. And then quickly, Doc and Mac, because I know time limitations. I just want to hear who they would select. I would select, for what it's worth, the 1980 team, and I'm done with that as far as I go.
Mac?
Listen, I think the 1902 team I'd pick, I don't know if they played in Philly or not, but that would be my choice when they were still, they were still having the gloves that barely fit the hands and the bats that weighed about 10 pounds. So listen, the Phillies is a boring subject to me, guys. I'm sorry, man. I don't care.
Talking about Yankees has been so great for me all day long.
Oh my God!
I mean, they broke the Liberty Bell down there. They're a bunch of hoodlums. They got Rocky in the center, and listen. For my opinion in this is that I think that the Yankees, the Mets, the Red Sox, the original teams that played way back when, they're still the teams to beat. I mean, you listen, these organizations have been around forever, and with experience comes wisdom. So if you're going to compare the Phillies to the Yankees, I mean, I don't know where you're coming from. So anyway, listen, guys, I think it's a debate that's fun and we're having a good time with. But my wife's over here waving me off as I attack Pags, but that's one of my favorite things to do when he comes on the show. So anyway, listen, the older teams, they have the organizations, they have the wisdom, they've been doing it for a long time, and these other teams are just trying to catch up. So I Philadelphia, I mean, I try to avoid that when I'm driving. I'll tell you the truth, guys. So
now listen, Philadelphia's got Rocky, the greatest fighter, greatest movie, no doubt about that. The 1980 Phillies, obviously, I think we're the three people who are willing to answer the question are all in agreement that team was just so much fun. Gary Maddox, I don't think Pags mentioned him.
I did not mention him.
And Steve Carlton. And of course, we talked about this when Pags and I did the show just ourselves a couple of weeks ago. The great Tug McGraw. He was just so much fun. So that's my pick of which of those two teams. So,
and Larry Bowa, great defensive shortstop.
Larry Bowa, shortstop. Manny Trio, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Very good. Very
Yeah,
good.
so I mean, it was a great team, and like I said, they just were honored just a few games before they won their 10,000th game. So if you want to talk about the teams of old, the Phillies are the oldest teams of all the teams that you mentioned. So just to let you know about that, Mac. But anyways, our 2 hours is up, and I got to reshare it again. So I got to get us off here quick. So everybody, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll be back next week for another Saturday debate show. Everybody, enjoy the rest of your weekend and have a